The world of the Ice Age stretched endlessly, a vast and unforgiving expanse of snow, ice, and jagged mountains, with a wind carved through forests like invisible blades, and rivers lay frozen under thick, glassy layers of ice. In this stark wilderness, survival was never guaranteed. Every day was a delicate balance between life and death. The sun barely pierced the horizon during the long winters, casting everything in a pale, ghostly light, and shadows seemed to hide dangers at every turn. For the humans who walked this frozen world, warmth was the most precious commodity, fire the most sacred ally, and shelter a fragile haven against the relentless cold. Yet the same snow and ice that threatened their lives also created a strange beauty, a crystalline landscape, where frost-laden trees sparkled like gemstones and the auroras danced across the night sky in vibrant, fleeting colors. In these conditions, fear and awe walked side by side. Cavemen navigated through blizzards with bodies clad in furs, their breaths clouding in the frozen air, hearts pounding with both terror and determination. The wilderness was alive with predators, wolves, saber-toothed cats, and massive Ice Age bears, all hunting for survival just as fiercely as humans did. Every crack of a branch or distant howl could be a warning of danger. Yet the same silence between storms offered a rare moment of peace, a chance to witness the quiet majesty of this frozen realm. It was a place where every decision mattered, where knowledge of the land, the weather, and the behavior of animals could tip the balance between life and death. Winter was not just a season. It was a test of endurance, courage, and intelligence. Cavemen faced not only the physical cold, but the psychological strain of endless nights and scarce food. Isolation could weigh heavily on the mind, yet the warmth of a small fire and the presence of companions offered comfort and hope. It was within these moments, huddled around flickering flames, listening to the wind scream across frozen valleys, that humans discovered resilience. Each day required observation, adaptation, and ingenuity, knowing where to find water, which plants could be eaten even under frost, how to track herds through deep snow, and how to build shelters strong enough to resist the storms. In this world, survival was a narrative written in contrasts. Warmth against cold, light against darkness, life against death. The Ice Age shaped humans not just physically, but mentally, forcing them to invent, to cooperate, and to endure. It forged the foundation for culture, social bonds, and the tools that would eventually carry humanity into warmer lands and brighter days. As we step into this frozen world, we begin to understand the courage and ingenuity that allowed early humans to thrive in one of the harshest climates the Earth has ever known. Their story is not just one of struggle, but of triumph, a testament to the unyielding human spirit that refused to be extinguished, even under the most brutal winter skies. The Ice Age was not merely a period of extreme cold and harsh landscapes. It was also a time of human diversity, of multiple hominin species walking the earth side by side, each carving out a precarious existence in the frozen wilderness. Among them were the Neanderthals, sturdy and powerful, with bodies built to withstand the chill of glacial winters. Their wide rib cages, thick bones, and short, muscular limbs were evolutionary adaptations that helped conserve heat in temperatures that could plummet far below freezing. In contrast, early Homo sapiens, more gracile and agile, relied on intelligence, creativity, and social cooperation to survive. Though physically less robust, they were capable of making tools, clothing, and shelters that multiplied their chances of survival, using cunning and foresight to compensate for brute strength. Meanwhile, the elusive Denisovans, known largely from genetic evidence and fragmentary remains, left subtle but profound marks on the genetic tapestry of humanity, hinting at a complex web of interbreeding, cultural exchange, and adaptation in extreme environments. These groups were defined not only by their anatomy, but also by the ways they responded to the challenges of the Ice Age. Neanderthals, with their stocky frames, could hunt large game and withstand colder conditions more easily, yet their cognitive approaches, while sophisticated, appeared more focused on immediate survival. They created tools, used fire, and cared for their injured and elderly, but their strategies often centered on the present moment. Homo sapiens, however, began to show evidence of long-term planning, storing food, creating more elaborate shelters, and even producing symbolic art. These behaviors suggest that the human mind was evolving not only to survive, but to understand, interpret, and even influence the world around it. The Ice Age, in this sense, was as much a crucible for culture as it was a test of survival. The landscapes these humans inhabited were filled with challenges that demanded adaptation on every level. In frozen forests and treeless steppes, food was scarce, rivers and lakes were frozen solid, and storms could appear suddenly, burying entire regions under layers of snow. For Neanderthals and Homo sapiens alike, survival depended on an intimate understanding of a land. Tracking animals through snowdrifts, recognizing subtle signs of predator activity, and knowing which plants could provide nourishment in a world where greenery was hidden beneath ice. Each species developed strategies finely tuned to their abilities. Neanderthals relied heavily on strength, ambushing animals and overpowering them in close quarters, while Homo sapiens used ingenuity, creating traps, coordinating hunts over long distances, and exploiting the environment in more flexible ways. Yet, despite these differences, all Ice Age humans shared certain universal traits. They formed small, cooperative groups in which each member had a role: hunters, gatherers, caregivers, toolmakers, and lookout sentinels. Social cohesion was vital because no one could survive alone for long in the relentless winter. Bonds were strengthened not just by necessity, but by shared experiences: the warmth of a fire, the success of a hunt, the collective mourning of a lost member. Within these tribes, knowledge passed from one generation to the next became a lifeline, preserving techniques, routes, and strategies honed over centuries. The story of survival was thus also the story of human culture in its earliest form, a story written in snow, ice, and the flickering shadows of firelight. The physical evidence of these Ice Age people reveals both their limitations and their ingenuity. Neanderthals left behind robust skeletons, some of which show signs of healed injuries, suggesting that groups cared for their members even after accidents or debilitating wounds. Homo sapiens, meanwhile, produced intricate tools, from finely shaped stone blades to bone needles for sewing animal hides into warm clothing. Cave sites reveal remnants of hearths, animal bones, and primitive shelters, painting a picture of lives shaped by both necessity and invention. Even the decoration of objects and the creation of symbolic art speak to the emergence of abstract thought, a mental expansion that allowed humans to imagine futures, plan hunts, and communicate complex ideas. Survival was no longer merely a physical challenge. It became a cognitive one, where strategy, memory, and innovation were as important as strength and endurance. Cultural practices also reflected the deep understanding these humans had of their environment. Neanderthals, for instance, sometimes buried their dead, a practice hinting at both ritual and awareness of mortality, as well as perhaps a way to avoid attracting predators to the living group. Homo sapiens, in addition to burial practices, created cave paintings and carvings that may have served multiple purposes: storytelling, education, spiritual expression, and reinforcement of group identity. These behaviors suggest that Ice Age humans were beginning to grasp abstract concepts, bridging the gap between mere survival and a deeper comprehension of the world around them. Even in the harshest winters, when frostbitten fingers clutched stone tools and frozen winds howled outside their shelters, they found ways to assert meaning, to leave traces that would echo across millennia. The differences between Neanderthals and Homo sapiens also played a role in their interactions. Genetic studies now reveal that these groups occasionally interbred, sharing traits that could enhance survival, such as immune responses to cold-related pathogens. Archaeological evidence shows periods of coexistence in the same regions, sometimes cooperative, sometimes competitive. In the struggle to endure Ice Age winters, Knowledge transfer could mean the difference between life and death, and it is possible that cultural borrowing, techniques for tool-making, hunting, or clothing occurred between these populations. This interplay reminds us that human evolution was not a linear path, but a complex web of adaptation, experimentation, and survival strategies that collectively shaped our species. In the end, the story of Ice Age humans is one of contrast, power and vulnerability, intelligence and instinct, isolation and community. Neanderthals and Homo sapiens each developed unique strategies to meet the demands of their environment, but both demonstrated a remarkable capacity for adaptation, cooperation, and resilience. Their lives were marked by the ever-present tension between danger and safety, hunger and sustenance, cold and warmth, struggle and triumph. By studying their anatomy, artifacts, and traces of culture, we gain insight not only into how they survived, but also into the very origins of what it means to be human. The capacity to understand the world, to innovate, to care for others, and to endure. As we peer back into this frozen past, we begin to see the Ice Age not simply as an era of hardship, but as a crucible that forged the traits, behaviors, and ingenuity that define humanity today. These early people were not merely surviving. They were creating the foundations of civilization in the shadow of glaciers, in the long, dark winters, and under skies streaked with northern lights. Every step they took across the snow, every animal tracked, every fire tended, and every shelter built was a testament to the power of adaptation and the resilience of the human spirit in the face of nature's most extreme challenges. The Ice Age was a world dominated by extremes, where winter was not just a season, but a relentless force that shaped every aspect of life. The cold was not merely uncomfortable, it was lethal. Temperatures could plunge far below what modern humans consider survivable, and the wind cut through even the thickest layers of fur and hide, carrying snow and ice in blinding sheets. The very landscape was transformed by the freezing months. Rivers became solid highways of ice. Lakes turned into slippery expanses, and snow drifts could swallow entire forests under their weight. For those who walked this frozen world, every step was a calculated risk, and every decision carried life or death consequences. The environment was both a provider and a predator. It offered animals to hunt and materials for shelter, yet demanded constant vigilance and ingenuity to endure. Cavemen quickly learned that the threat of cold was not uniform. Some regions were milder, where conifer forests provided some protection from the wind, while others were barren steppes, exposing humans to open skies and biting storms. Seasonal patterns dictated movement and survival strategies. Winter was a time when food became scarce and the natural world slowed into dormancy. Prey animals migrated or burrowed. Water sources froze over, and the once plentiful vegetation was hidden beneath thick ice. The harshness of the environment was amplified by the sheer unpredictability of weather patterns. A calm, clear day could give way to a sudden blizzard, burying tracks, disorienting hunters, and testing both physical endurance and psychological resilience. Every human who survived the Ice Age had to master not only the art of navigation, but also the patience and perception required to anticipate these shifts. The cold was not just physical, it also carried a psychological weight. Long nights and short days extended for weeks or even months, leaving early humans with limited sunlight and little warmth. Darkness was pervasive, and in it, imagination could conjure threats both real and imagined. The howls of wolves in the distance, the scraping of claws across frozen ground, or the cracking of ice underfoot could all amplify fear and stress. Isolation during these months tested mental fortitude as much as physical strength. Communities that relied solely on instinct and strength might survive a day, but those that used intelligence, planning, and social cohesion had a better chance of enduring the entire winter. Fire, shelter, and social bonds became more than tools. They were lifelines against both cold and despair. Snow and ice brought additional challenges beyond mere temperature. Thick layers of snow could conceal treacherous terrain. Hidden crevices, frozen rivers with thin ice, and cliffs disguised by drifts. Moving through deep snow required more energy than walking on open ground, quickly exhausting even the fittest individuals. For hunters, the task of tracking prey became exponentially harder. Footprints were covered or distorted, and familiar landmarks could vanish under white expanses. At the same time, predators adapted to these conditions, their movements efficient and predatory instincts sharpened by the same environment that threatened humans. Humans had to think creatively, creating paths, using elevated vantage points, or employing stealth to approach animals. Survival was a continuous negotiation with the landscape itself. Frostbite and hypothermia were constant dangers. Extremities, fingers, toes, ears could freeze in minutes if left exposed. Early humans had to learn quickly which signs of cold injury were manageable and which were fatal. Clothing, layers of fur, and shelter were critical, but even these could fail under extreme conditions. The consequences of failure were immediate and unforgiving. The cold was silent and invisible until its effects became devastating. A hand lost to frostbite, a weakened body succumbing to exposure, or a group losing members to an unexpected snowstorm. These threats demanded vigilance, foresight, and cooperation. Knowledge passed down from elders, experimentation with materials, and communal problem-solving were essential for enduring these winters. Food scarcity during winter amplified the threat. Animals migrated or hibernated, plants were inaccessible, and stored resources could dwindle quickly. Early humans learned to anticipate these shortages, using preservation techniques such as drying meat, storing nuts, and caching supplies beneath snow or ice. Hunting strategies had to adjust. Smaller, more agile prey became targets, while larger game required coordinated group effort. Every decision carried risk. One failed hunt or misjudged route could result in starvation, while success brought nourishment and, critically, psychological relief. Hunger and cold were intertwined challenges, each intensifying the other. Water was another silent threat. Frozen rivers and lakes forced humans to melt ice or snow, a time-consuming process that consumed energy and resources. Drinking from open water sources was rare and often dangerous, as thin ice or hidden currents could turn a simple task into a perilous endeavor. This scarcity of liquid compounded the physical strain, requiring ingenuity and careful planning. Some humans learned to recognize signs of accessible water, creating indirect methods of collection or using fire to safely thaw ice. The ability to manage these essentials, food, water, and warmth, defined success in a world where failure meant death. The psychological dimension of winter survival cannot be overstated. Humans who endured these months developed patience, observational skills, and mental resilience. They learned to read the subtle signals of weather, the movements of prey, and the signs of predators. They created routines and rituals that reinforced cohesion and morale. Storytelling, communal gatherings around fire, and symbolic practices became mechanisms to combat fear and monotony. The harshest winters demanded the most sophisticated combinations of cognition, cooperation, and courage. Survival was not merely a physical act, but a mental and cultural endeavor. In the end, understanding the winter threat meant recognizing that every element, the cold, the snow, the darkness, the scarcity of food, the predators, and the unforgiving terrain, was interlinked. Each challenge amplified the others, creating a complex web of danger and opportunity. Ice Age humans had to engage all their senses, all their knowledge, and all their social bonds to navigate this world. They were not passive victims of cold. They were observers, planners, and innovators, constantly adapting to the changing environment. Every fire built, every shelter reinforced, and every route chosen was an act of defiance against the frozen landscape. The threat of winter also illuminated the resilience of early humans. It forced them to innovate, to cooperate, and to create culture as a survival strategy. The Ice Age, with all its brutality, became a crucible in which human ingenuity and endurance were tested and honed. By understanding these threats, we gain insight not only into the physical dangers faced by our ancestors, but also into the mental and social mechanisms that allowed them to prevail. Survival was a story of contrasts: fear and courage, cold and warmth, scarcity and abundance, life and death. It was a world in which every moment demanded attention, and every choice carried consequences, shaping not just individual survival, but the trajectory of humanity itself. In the frozen expanse of the Ice Age, fire was more than a tool. It was a lifeline, a fragile heartbeat of warmth and survival against the encroaching darkness. To early humans, fire was sacred. It provided heat to stave off frostbite, light to pierce the endless nights, and a shield against the predators that lurked just beyond the flickering glow. Its importance extended beyond the practical. The crackling flames became a center of social life, a gathering place where stories were shared, knowledge was passed on, and communal bonds were strengthened. In a world dominated by ice, darkness, and danger, mastering fire was nothing short of a triumph over nature itself. The quest to create and maintain fire was both a challenge and a profound skill. Cavemen did not have matches or modern lighters. They relied on friction, flint, and sparks, often requiring hours of laborious effort to coax life from stone and wood. The techniques varied across regions and species. Some humans used hand drills, twirling sticks rapidly against soft wood to generate heat. Others discovered the potential of striking stones together to produce sparks that could ignite dry tinder. Each method demanded patience, precision, and knowledge of materials. Dry leaves, bark, and grasses carefully selected to catch even the faintest spark. A single misstep could extinguish hope, leaving a group exposed to the merciless cold of night. Fire was transformative in ways that went far beyond warmth. It allowed humans to cook food, turning raw meat into a more digestible, nutrient-rich source of sustenance. Cooking not only made food safer, but also provided additional calories, essential for survival in harsh winter conditions. The fire also served as a beacon and deterrent. The glow illuminated the surroundings, giving hunters the advantage of visibility and alerting others to human presence. More importantly, it kept predators at bay. Wolves, saber-toothed cats, and bears, formidable creatures of the Ice Age, were wary of flames, and the careful management of fire could mean the difference between safety and fatal encounters. Yet, fire was a double-edged tool. While it brought protection and comfort, it also demanded constant attention. Ashes had to be managed, fuel replenished, and sparks carefully nurtured to prevent loss. A fire that went out in the middle of a blizzard could be catastrophic, leaving an entire group vulnerable to frostbite, hypothermia, and predation. For this reason, fire became the focal point of communal effort. One person might tend the flames while others gathered wood, hunted, or prepared food. Knowledge of fire-making was passed down meticulously, becoming a critical part of the cultural and practical education of every member of the group. Fire also carried psychological significance. In the endless nights of the Ice Age, darkness was oppressive, a canvas for fear and imagination. The flickering light of a hearth created a sense of security, breaking the monotony of snow and ice, offering warmth not just to the body but to the mind. Around the fire, humans could share stories of hunts, victories, and losses, teaching lessons about the landscape, the animals, and the dangers that lay in wait. Rituals may have emerged around these gatherings, where fire became a symbol of life, continuity, and hope. The glow reminded them that they were not entirely at the mercy of the frozen world, that their intelligence and ingenuity could bend elements to their will. Fire also enabled humans to extend their activities into the night. In the short, dim days of winter, productive time was limited. With fire, cooking, tool preparation, planning, and social interaction could continue despite the darkness. It became the center of domestic life, the nucleus around which survival strategies were coordinated. Groups could plan hunts, repair tools, or even teach the young how to identify edible plants and prepare clothing, all in the safety and illumination of the fire's warmth. The light allowed humans to maintain a rhythm and continuity of life, countering the disorientation and despair that extreme winter conditions could impose. The control of fire fostered creativity and innovation. Early humans began experimenting with different fuels, discovering that some woods burned hotter, longer, or more steadily than others. They learned to construct stone circles, pits, or windbreaks to contain flames and maximize heat. Sparks were carried from one location to another, creating semi-permanent hearths or aiding groups in migration during winter months. Fire-making was no longer just survival. It became a technology, a skill that demanded foresight, understanding, and experimentation. Those who mastered it gained a profound advantage, not just in enduring the cold, but in shaping their environment to meet their needs. Fire's importance also extended into the spiritual and symbolic realms. The transformative nature of flame, its ability to change raw meat into edible food, darkness into light, and cold into warmth, likely inspired reverence. Anthropologists speculate that early rituals and symbolic acts may have centered around fire, connecting humans with forces larger than themselves and giving meaning to the struggle for survival. Fire became a locus for community identity, a marker of presence and continuity in an otherwise indifferent and harsh landscape. In these rituals, humans found not only comfort but also cohesion, reinforcing the social bonds necessary for enduring long winters together. Ultimately, fire represented the intersection of physical necessity, social cohesion, and intellectual advancement. It embodied the triumph of intelligence over instinct, strategy over brute force, and culture over mere survival. Ice Age humans learned that warmth and light were not given freely by nature. They had to be created, maintained, and protected with constant vigilance. Fire was the line drawn between vulnerability and safety, between death and continuation, between despair and hope. Those who could wield it effectively transformed the environment from an overwhelming threat into a manageable, even habitable world. In a broader sense, the mastery of fire marked a turning point in human history. It extended the reach of early humans into colder climates, allowed for the domestication of night hours, and laid the foundation for technology, social structures, and culture that would define humanity for millennia. Around the hearth, humans discovered the power of collaboration, storytelling, and planning. They realized that survival was not just about confronting nature directly, but about understanding it, manipulating it, and creating spaces of safety within it. In the darkness of the Ice Age, fire became the most profound symbol of human ingenuity, courage, and endurance. A small, flickering miracle that illuminated both the night and the potential of the human spirit. In the frozen landscapes of the Ice Age, the shelter was as vital as fire, providing protection from biting winds, blizzards, and the predators that roamed under the snow-laden forests and frozen plains. Humans learned quickly that survival depended not only on warmth and sustenance, but also on finding or constructing a secure space that could shield them from the relentless cold. Some sought refuge in natural formations, such as caves and rock overhangs, which offered immediate protection from the elements. These spaces provided a stable microclimate, keeping out wind, retaining some heat from fires, and offering concealment from predators. However, natural shelters were rare and often contested by other animals, forcing humans to innovate and adapt when caves were unavailable or too dangerous. The construction of shelters was a testament to human ingenuity. Early humans learned to use available resources, wood, bones, and animal hides, to create structures that could withstand the harsh winter months. Simple lean-tos and windbreaks provided minimal protection, but over time, these evolved into more complex huts insulated with layers of fur, moss, and snow. The design of these shelters was practical yet sophisticated. Entrances faced away from prevailing winds, walls were thick enough to retain warmth, and floors were sometimes raised or lined with insulating materials. Every decision, from the placement of a hearth to the angle of a roof, was informed by trial, error, and keen observation of the environment. Caves, while providing immediate shelter, also posed challenges. Moisture could seep through the walls, and temperatures could fluctuate dramatically depending on the season. Early humans learned to mitigate these effects by building hearths inside, using fire not only for warmth and cooking, but also for drying damp areas and keeping the space habitable. The accumulation of smoke in poorly ventilated caves created discomfort, but it also had the side effect of deterring insects and some predators. Thus, the placement and maintenance of fire within shelters became a delicate balance, providing heat and safety while avoiding suffocation or destruction. Animal hides were a critical component of portable shelters, especially for groups that needed to move in search of food or better conditions. Skins were stretched over wooden frames to create tents or temporary huts, offering insulation and protection from snow and wind. Sewing techniques, using bone needles and sinew threads, allowed hides to be joined into larger coverings, demonstrating both skill and foresight. Layers of furs were added for warmth, and the most careful crafters knew which materials provided maximum insulation, durability, and ease of repair. A well-built hide shelter could mean the difference between enduring a blizzard or succumbing to frostbite. The location of shelters was as important as their construction. Proximity to water sources, food supplies, and hunting grounds dictated where groups would settle. Elevated sites offered a defensive advantage and reduced the risk of flooding or deep snow accumulation, while low-lying areas might provide more wind protection and easier access to frozen streams. Humans also learned to observe animal behavior, noting where predators avoided or frequented to minimize danger. Shelters were rarely isolated. Clusters of structures formed the nuclei of small communities, reinforcing social bonds and allowing cooperative defense and shared resources. Inside these shelters, life was precarious but also vibrant. The warmth of a fire transformed a cold, inhospitable cave into a center of human activity. Families huddled together, tending fires, preparing food, making tools, and caring for children or the elderly. The space became a classroom for survival skills, where younger members observed and learned the essential knowledge required to endure the long winter months. The act of creating and maintaining a shelter was therefore deeply social as well as practical. Collaboration was essential. No individual could build, heat, or defend a shelter alone. Every person had a role, from gathering materials to monitoring the fire, ensuring that the group remained safe and warm. Predators added constant tension to this domestic space. Wolves, saber-toothed cats, and bears prowled near caves and temporary shelters, drawn by the scent of food or the presence of humans. The defensive design of shelters, combined with the strategic use of fire and noise, often kept these threats at bay. But danger was never entirely eliminated. Vigilance was a continuous necessity. Entrances were monitored, and groups would rotate watches at night to ensure that no predator could surprise them. The presence of multiple individuals in a shared space not only increased physical safety, but also strengthened psychological resilience, as fear was shared and mitigated through cooperation. Shelters were not only practical, but also imbued with meaning. Anthropologists suggest that the care and attention given to constructing and maintaining living spaces reflected early humans' understanding of their environment and their place within it. The very act of building a secure shelter demonstrated foresight, planning, and adaptation, a recognition that survival was a continuous process, not a momentary achievement. Shelters represented both the triumph of intelligence over the harshness of nature and the fragile vulnerability of humans in an unforgiving world. The ingenuity of Ice Age shelters extended to the integration of multiple survival elements. Hearths provided warmth and cooking, platforms or bedding areas insulated occupants from cold floors, and strategic openings allowed smoke to escape while minimizing heat loss. In some regions, humans even constructed semi-permanent settlements, indicating a degree of territoriality and long-term planning. These structures were a precursor to more sophisticated architecture and urban planning, demonstrating that even in the harshest climates, humans could transform the environment to meet their needs. Ultimately, shelters were more than physical structures. They were symbols of human resilience, cooperation, and ingenuity. They embodied the delicate balance between vulnerability and protection, between exposure and control that defined Ice Age life. Each cave, hut, or hide was a testament to the human capacity to endure, adapt, and thrive despite the relentless challenges of winter. In the interplay of snow, wind, and fire, early humans found not only protection, but also the foundation for community, culture, and the enduring legacy of survival. In the harsh landscapes of the Ice Age, hunting was not a pastime or sport. It was a matter of survival. The frozen plains, snow-covered forests, and jagged mountains were home to massive Ice Age mammals, from woolly mammoths and woolly rhinoceroses to reindeer, bison, and smaller game like hares and birds. These animals were the primary source of food, clothing, and tools, yet hunting them was perilous. Ice Age humans had to navigate treacherous terrain, unpredictable weather, and cunning predators while attempting to track, trap, and kill animals far larger and often stronger than themselves. Every hunt demanded strategy, courage, and cooperation. A failed hunt could mean starvation, while a successful one could sustain a family or clan for days, even weeks. The challenges of hunting in winter were manifold. Deep snow slowed movement, massed tracks, and exhausted hunters quickly. Rivers and lakes, frozen solid, blocked access to water or prey while concealing dangerous ice beneath. The cold itself sapped strength and dulled reflexes, making the physical exertion of pursuing large animals even more dangerous. Yet, Ice Age humans developed remarkable adaptations to these obstacles. They learned to read subtle signs in the landscape, the pattern of broken branches, faint impressions in snow, and animal droppings, to anticipate the movement of herds. Observation became as important as physical strength, and the ability to track prey across frozen expanses distinguished the skilled hunter from the novice. Group coordination was essential for survival. Early humans rarely hunted alone, especially when targeting large mammals. Instead, they relied on teamwork, using collective intelligence and synchronized movements to drive herds into ambushes or traps. Hunters might surround animals, cutting off escape routes, or stampede them toward cliffs, pits, or natural barriers. This required careful planning, communication, and timing, an understanding of both the animal's instincts and the abilities of fellow hunters. Success was a shared triumph, while failure carried collective risk. Each hunt was a test of skill, observation, and social cohesion, revealing the critical interplay between individual ability and group strategy. Tools were crucial in Ice Age hunting. Early humans used spears, often tipped with sharpened stone points, to bring down large game. They fashioned bows and arrows in some regions, allowing hunters to strike from a distance and reduce personal risk. Traps and snares, made from wood, sinew, and bone, supplemented direct attacks, particularly for smaller animals. Each tool represented experimentation, adaptation, and knowledge passed down from one generation to the next. Crafting weapons was itself a survival skill, requiring dexterity, creativity, and an understanding of materials that could withstand the harsh conditions of winter. The right spear, arrow, or trap could mean the difference between a successful hunt and an empty stomach. The physical dangers of hunting were immense. Pursuing massive creatures like mammoths or bison was not merely a test of endurance, but a confrontation with raw power. An angry animal could trample hunters, gore them with tusks or horns, or drag them into snowdrifts. Even smaller prey, like wolves or wildcats, could inflict serious injuries when cornered or threatened. Hunters had to balance risk and reward constantly, weighing the potential gain of meat and resources against the possibility of injury or death. Every hunt was a calculated gamble, demanding courage, observation, and precise execution. Ice Age hunting was also deeply tied to seasonal patterns. Animals migrated to survive the harsh winters, following vegetation and water sources. Humans learned these routes and timed their hunts accordingly. Winter hunting was especially challenging because food scarcity made every hunt critical, and animals were often more cautious, seeking safety from predators. In some cases, humans relied on cached food or ice-preserved stores to supplement failed hunts, highlighting the need for planning and foresight. The intertwining of observation, migration, and strategy illustrates how Ice Age humans were intimately connected to the rhythms of the natural world. The act of hunting was not purely practical. It had social and cultural dimensions. Successful hunts reinforced the status and respect of skilled hunters within the group, while also fostering collaboration and teaching younger members essential survival skills. Knowledge of hunting techniques, animal behavior, and landscape navigation was passed orally and through demonstration, ensuring continuity of survival strategies. Hunting could also involve ritual or symbolic elements, with some groups leaving parts of animals in specific locations, perhaps as offerings or markers. These behaviors reveal that survival and culture were intertwined, and that hunting was as much a social practice as it was a physical necessity. Winter hunting demanded ingenuity in processing the catch. Large mammals provided not only food, but also hides for clothing and shelter, bones for tools, and sinew for sewing and construction. Humans had to butcher efficiently in freezing temperatures, sometimes working outdoors in the snow, and preserve the excess for future scarcity. Techniques such as smoking, drying, and freezing meat ensured sustenance during long winter months, demonstrating foresight and adaptability. Every portion of a hunted animal was utilized, reflecting both necessity and respect for the labor invested in the hunt. Predators were another consideration. Wolves, large cats, and other carnivores competed with humans for prey, sometimes attacking humans directly or scavenging from their kills. Hunters had to protect their hard-won resources, often using fire, noise, or positioning to deter these threats. Understanding predator behavior became an essential part of the hunt, influencing both strategy and safety. The constant presence of danger required vigilance and adaptability, reinforcing the notion that survival was a dynamic interaction between humans, prey, predators, and the environment. Ultimately, hunting in the Ice Age was a high-stakes endeavor, blending physical strength, intelligence, observation, and social cooperation. It exemplified the delicate balance between risk and reward, courage and caution, life and death. The strategies and skills developed during these hunts, tracking, teamwork, tool-making, preservation, and adaptation, formed the foundation of human survival in extreme climates. Through hunting, early humans not only secured sustenance, but also reinforced social bonds, developed culture, and asserted their place within a harsh, frozen world. Every successful hunt was both a triumph over the elements and a testament to human ingenuity, courage, and resilience. As winter deepened and the frozen world stretched endlessly, hunting alone was never sufficient to guarantee survival. Early humans understood that the scarcity of prey, combined with the harshness of weather, demanded careful planning and preparation. Gathering and storing food became essential strategies, a delicate balancing act between immediate needs and long-term survival. While hunting provided large amounts of meat in bursts, it was unpredictable and risky. Plants, roots, nuts, and frozen fruits supplemented the diet, offering reliable sustenance when prey was scarce. Knowledge of edible vegetation, their locations, and their seasonal cycles was painstakingly observed and transmitted across generations, forming a critical component of Ice Age survival. Winter foraging posed unique challenges. Snow and ice obscured vegetation, making even familiar plants difficult to locate. Roots had to be dug from frozen soil, sometimes with rudimentary tools fashioned from bone or stone. Nuts buried beneath layers of snow had to be carefully retrieved, and frozen fruits required delicate handling to prevent loss. Humans developed techniques for recognizing which plants remained edible after frost or could be thawed without spoiling. Gathering demanded patience, precision, and a deep understanding of the land. Every successful find provided not just nourishment, but a measure of psychological comfort in the cold, harsh environment. Storage was as critical as gathering. Meat had to be preserved for weeks or even months, as winter could stretch long beyond initial expectations. Early humans discovered multiple methods to keep food from spoiling in freezing conditions. Smoking meat over a low fire removed moisture and extended shelf life, while drying thin strips in the wind or sun created portable rations. In some regions, frozen caches were buried beneath snow or ice, taking advantage of natural refrigeration. These techniques required foresight, experimentation, and careful monitoring. A poorly stored resource could spoil or attract predators, turning months of labor into wasted effort. The organization of food resources was often communal. Groups shared the responsibility of gathering, hunting, and storing provisions, ensuring that every member had access to necessary sustenance. Leaders or elders may have coordinated these efforts, determining which foods to prioritize and how to distribute them in times of scarcity. This system of cooperation and planning reinforced social cohesion, allowing communities to endure periods of extreme deprivation. Scarcity became a catalyst for innovation, fostering strategies that combined intelligence, labor, and collaboration. Gathering also involved understanding animal behavior and the ecological cycles of the Ice Age. Early humans learned that certain plants were more abundant near migratory routes of animals or along riverbanks that remained unfrozen. Knowledge of seasonal availability allowed for careful planning, with summer and autumn providing abundant stores that could be preserved for the harsher months. Observation of the natural world, the cycles of frost and thaw, and the habits of animals intertwined with human survival, creating a sophisticated web of ecological awareness. The nutritional aspect of gathered food was equally vital. Roots, nuts, and berries offered carbohydrates, fats, and vitamins necessary to endure cold and physical exertion. In the absence of fresh vegetation, preserved foods provided critical energy, sustaining humans during long hunts or travel. The combination of hunting and gathering ensured a balanced diet, reducing the risk of malnutrition during the relentless winter months. This understanding of food diversity and balance highlights the intelligence and adaptability of Ice Age humans, who learned to survive through observation, experimentation, and experience. Storage solutions also extended to smaller animals and fish. Caches of dried or smoked fish, preserved in the cold, provided protein sources when hunting large game was impossible. Snares and traps allowed humans to catch rabbits, birds, and other small prey, which could be stored temporarily for later consumption. Each of these efforts required knowledge of animal behavior, patience in construction and maintenance, and skill in preparation. Combined with large-scale hunting and plant gathering, these strategies created a resilient food system capable of sustaining communities through the harshest months. Preparation for scarcity also had a psychological dimension. Knowing that provisions were secured offered comfort and reduced anxiety in the face of freezing temperatures and dangerous landscapes. Food storage was not merely a practical measure. It became a source of stability, morale, and hope. Communities that successfully managed their resources experienced greater cohesion and resilience, reinforcing social bonds and interdependence. This interplay between survival strategy and psychological well-being highlights the sophisticated, adaptive thinking of Ice Age humans. In some cases, humans developed methods to ration their resources, carefully calculating portions to stretch supplies across weeks of scarcity. Decisions about allocation were critical, as overconsumption could lead to depletion, while underfeeding risked weakening hunters and gatherers. This balancing act required foresight and discipline, as well as knowledge passed down through generations. Early humans recognized that survival was not just a daily struggle, but a long-term endeavor, where each action had consequences for the well-being of the entire group. Ultimately, the gathering and storage of food illustrate the complex intelligence and adaptability of Ice Age humans. These strategies were not random or instinctual. They were the product of careful observation, experimentation, and cooperation. Humans learned to read the land, anticipate challenges, and create systems that mitigated risk. Through these efforts, they transformed scarcity into opportunity, turning the harsh winters from a relentless threat into a manageable, navigable challenge. Gathering and storing food became both a practical necessity and a defining feature of human ingenuity, allowing communities to survive, thrive, and pass their knowledge forward. In the frozen expanses of the Ice Age, the human body alone was ill-equipped to withstand the bitter cold and relentless wind. Survival depended not only on fire and shelter, but also on clothing, a vital adaptation that transformed the human form into a tool capable of enduring extreme conditions. Ice Age humans became expert tailors of the natural world, turning animal hides, furs, and sinew into garments that insulated, protected, and allowed mobility. Each layer of clothing was a carefully considered choice, designed to preserve warmth, repel moisture, and shield from the cutting winds of winter. The ingenuity and foresight required to produce effective clothing were critical to survival, illustrating the intersection of practical necessity and creative problem-solving. Animal hides were the primary material, each chosen for its warmth, durability, and availability. Woolly mammoths, reindeer, bison, and other large mammals provided thick furs that, when properly treated, offered unparalleled insulation. Humans learned to process hides, scraping off fat and hair in precise ways to enhance pliability and comfort while retaining thermal properties. Smaller furs, such as those from foxes or hares, were used as linings or added layers for extremities like hands, feet, and the face, which were most susceptible to frostbite. The combination of materials created a system of natural layering, balancing insulation, flexibility, and weight to allow both protection and movement. Sewing techniques became remarkably sophisticated. Using bone needles and sinew threads, early humans joined hides with precision, creating garments that fit the body snugly and retained heat. Stitches had to be strong enough to endure movement, weather, and wear, yet fine enough to prevent gaps where wind or snow could penetrate. Some clothing may have incorporated decorative elements, which likely served social or symbolic purposes, indicating status, skill, or group identity. Every garment was thus both functional and cultural, embodying survival, craftsmanship, and community knowledge. Footwear was equally critical. Thick soles fashioned from multiple layers of hide protected feet from frozen ground, sharp ice, and hidden debris. Wrapping and binding techniques, sometimes reinforced with moss or fur insulation, created flexible yet protective boots capable of enduring long treks across snow and ice. The survival of the group often depended on maintaining foot health, as frostbite or injury could render hunters and gatherers incapacitated. Proper footwear, carefully maintained and adapted to terrain, was a practical necessity and a mark of human ingenuity in the face of environmental extremes. Head and hand protection were vital to combat heat loss in the most exposed areas. Hoods, hats, and mittens made from furs or layered hides prevented frostbite and reduced the risk of hypothermia. These coverings were strategically designed, allowing vision and dexterity while minimizing heat loss. The careful observation of natural principles, such as covering extremities to reduce overall energy expenditure, demonstrates that Ice Age humans understood thermal management far beyond instinct, applying knowledge of anatomy, weather patterns, and materials science in practical ways. The process of creating clothing also had social dimensions. Garments were produced collaboratively, with knowledge passed from experienced members to younger or less skilled individuals. Hunting, skinning, and processing hides required coordinated effort, while sewing and layering were often communal activities around the hearth. This cooperation reinforced social bonds and transferred critical survival skills, ensuring continuity of expertise within a group. Clothing production was thus both practical and educational, teaching the next generation the techniques, strategies, and values necessary for enduring harsh winters. Clothing extended survival in other ways as well. Layered garments allowed humans to engage in extended hunts, gather food in remote areas, and travel long distances without succumbing to the cold. The ability to regulate temperature through adjustable layers prevented both overheating during exertion and excessive heat loss during rest. Mobility and energy conservation were crucial, and the sophistication of Ice Age clothing demonstrates an advanced understanding of these principles. In essence, clothing became a second skin, a protective extension of the body designed to navigate an environment that was otherwise inhospitable. Clothing also intersected with status, identity, and symbolism. Certain furs or decorative additions may have signified rank, achievement, or role within the group. For example, the skins of larger prey or rare animals might have been reserved for skilled hunters or leaders, while decorative stitching, beads, or pigments could convey messages about social affiliation. In this way, clothing was not merely functional but also a cultural artifact, reinforcing group cohesion, identity, and social norms in the midst of harsh environmental conditions. The evolution of clothing marked a turning point in human adaptation. It allowed early humans to expand into colder regions, survive longer winters, and undertake more ambitious hunting and gathering expeditions. It also illustrates the combination of observation, creativity, and practical knowledge that defined Ice Age ingenuity. Clothing was not instinctual. It was learned, refined, and innovated through trial and error, producing garments capable of sustaining life in some of the most extreme climates the Earth has ever known. Ultimately, clothing in the Ice Age was nature's armor, an intimate extension of human survival strategy. Every layer, stitch, and piece of fur represented a careful negotiation with the environment, a balance between protection, mobility, and endurance. By mastering this essential technology, humans transformed the frozen world from an overwhelming threat into a space where survival, innovation, and community were possible. In the interplay of frost, wind, and layered furs, the Ice Age human discovered the power of preparation, foresight, and ingenuity, a testament to the adaptability and resilience that would define humanity for generations to come. In the harsh and unrelenting winters of the Ice Age, survival depended as much on social cohesion as on fire, food, or shelter. Early humans could not endure the cold, hunt, and gather effectively alone. The group was essential. Families and communities provided protection, shared labor, and created networks of knowledge critical for navigating frozen landscapes. Every individual, whether child, elder, hunter, or gatherer, played a role in the survival of the collective. Life in winter demanded interdependence, turning small clans into highly organized social units, where cooperation was not just ideal but a matter of life and death. Daily life revolved around the necessities of survival, yet it was also rich with interactions that strengthened bonds and reinforced the group's identity. Around the warmth of hearth fires, adults shared knowledge with children, teaching them how to craft tools, sew hides, track animals, and recognize edible plants. These moments of instruction were vital, as the skills acquired would determine whether the next generation could withstand the same challenges. Storytelling likely emerged as both an educational tool and a cultural practice, conveying lessons about the environment, hunting strategies, and social norms, while also providing entertainment and psychological comfort during long, dark nights. Social roles were often specialized and coordinated. Some individuals focused on hunting large game, a dangerous but high-reward task requiring strength, skill, and strategy. Others concentrated on gathering plants, roots, and smaller animals, ensuring a more consistent food supply when hunting failed. Caregivers tended to children, the elderly, and injured members, maintaining health and ensuring continuity. Toolmakers produced the essential implements for hunting, cooking, and shelter construction, while scouts or lookouts monitored the environment for predators and weather changes. The division of labor allowed the community to function efficiently and adapt to the unpredictable demands of winter life. Sharing resources was central to survival and reinforced social cohesion. Meat from successful hunt was distributed among members. Hides and furs were allocated for clothing and shelter, and food caches were maintained collectively. Hoarding by an individual was rarely advantageous, as survival depended on the well-being of the entire group. Cooperation was essential, and mutual trust became a cornerstone of community life. Conflicts were likely managed through social norms or rituals, as maintaining harmony increased the chances of enduring the long, brutal winters. Family and social life also offered psychological resilience. The long nights, cold, and scarcity of resources could lead to despair, anxiety, and fear. Social interaction provided comfort, distraction, and emotional support. Shared meals, communal fires, and storytelling helped alleviate the stress of isolation, creating a sense of belonging and stability. The act of caring for one another, nursing the sick, sharing warmth, or protecting children, reinforced bonds that were essential for both emotional and physical survival. In essence, social structures acted as both a practical and psychological lifeline. Rituals and symbolic practices likely played a role in community life. The repetition of daily routines, tending fires, preparing food, maintaining shelters, may have been intertwined with ritualized behavior to reinforce group cohesion and ensure survival. Burial practices, the preservation of certain animal remains, or the use of symbolic markings may have reflected both practical knowledge and spiritual understanding, providing meaning and order in an otherwise harsh and unpredictable world. These early cultural expressions helped cement identity and reinforced a shared understanding of life, survival, and mortality within the group. Child rearing in winter was particularly challenging yet crucial. Infants and young children were vulnerable to cold, starvation, and illness, making constant care essential. Knowledge of warmth, feeding, and protection was passed down with great care, ensuring that the next generation would be capable of navigating the same conditions. Children likely observed and participated in daily tasks, gradually acquiring skills essential for adulthood. This intergenerational transmission of knowledge was a form of insurance against the caprices of winter, ensuring that the group's collective wisdom endured even as individuals succumbed to the environment's challenges. Community life also facilitated coordinated defense against predators. Large Ice Age carnivores, wolves, bears, and saber-toothed cats posed a constant threat. Groups patrolled shelters, created alarms, and strategically positioned fires to deter attacks. The shared responsibility of protection allowed individuals to focus on other survival tasks, knowing that others were safeguarding the group. This mutual reliance strengthened both trust and cohesion, illustrating the deep interconnection between survival and social organization. Communication was key to effective cooperation. Humans developed early vocalizations, gestures, and shared signals to coordinate hunts, gather resources, or warn of danger. The capacity for nuanced communication enabled strategic planning and problem-solving on a scale impossible for solitary individuals. This early social intelligence not only improved survival outcomes, but also laid the foundation for more complex language and cultural development in later human societies. Ultimately, family and social life in the Ice Age exemplified the intersection of survival, psychology, and culture. Life in freezing winters demanded interdependence, with each member contributing to the group's endurance. Cooperation, division of labor, resource sharing, education, and social rituals were not merely conveniences. They were essential strategies for survival. Through these bonds, humans created not just physical security, but also emotional and cultural stability, transforming the harshness of winter into a shared, navigable experience. The cohesion of these small communities reveals the power of human adaptation beyond physical tools and environmental mastery. Early humans learned that survival was not solely about individual skill, but about collective resilience, the ability to work, teach, care, and strategize as a unit. By fostering trust, knowledge transfer, and mutual protection, communities increase their chances of enduring winters, overcoming scarcity, and passing their wisdom to future generations. In the frozen landscapes of the Ice Age, family and social life were as critical as fire, shelter, and clothing, an invisible armor that safeguarded both body and spirit against the relentless cold. In the frozen expanse of the Ice Age, human life was a precarious balance between survival and extinction. Every day was filled with the struggle against cold, hunger, and predators. Yet early humans also developed a deep awareness of forces beyond their immediate control. This awareness gave rise to rituals and beliefs, practices that allowed them to interpret the world, confront mortality, and create meaning within the harshest environments. Life and death were not abstract concepts. They were immediate, tangible realities, and rituals provided a framework for understanding, coping, and uniting communities in the face of uncertainty. Death in the Ice Age was omnipresent. The cold claimed those who were ill, injured, or ill-prepared. Predators took the unwary, and accidents in hunting or traversing frozen landscapes were common. Burial practices, though varied, reflected an early human recognition of mortality and an emerging spiritual consciousness. Some communities carefully interred the dead in designated areas, sometimes accompanied by tools, food, or ornaments. These acts suggest a belief in an afterlife or at least a respect for the continuation of the spirit beyond the physical body. The care taken in these burials demonstrates that humans were already capable of abstract thought and symbolic representation, laying the groundwork for cultural traditions that would persist for millennia. Rituals were also intimately tied to survival strategies. Certain ceremonies may have accompanied hunts, intended to ensure success or honor the spirits of animals taken for food. Hunters might have left parts of carcasses in specific locations, painted symbols on cave walls, or performed dances and chants to mark the significance of the kill. These practices created a psychological framework that reinforced respect for the environment, the animals, and the delicate balance between life and death. Rituals helped humans manage fear, assert control over uncertain outcomes, and cultivate a sense of connection to forces larger than themselves. Communal gatherings around fire also had ritualistic significance. The hearth was more than warmth and light. It was the center of social cohesion, storytelling, and symbolic expression. Myths, legends, and lessons about survival were shared, transmitting knowledge that was essential for enduring long winters. Storytelling likely intertwined practical instruction with symbolic meaning, teaching not only how to track prey or process hides, but also embedding lessons about morality, cooperation, and respect for nature. Through these communal practices, humans developed cultural continuity, linking the living with their ancestors and the natural world in a shared narrative of survival. Artistic expression often intersected with ritual and belief. Cave paintings, carvings, and engravings, frequently depicting animals, hunting scenes, or abstract symbols, suggest that humans were attempting to interpret their world and influence outcomes through symbolic representation. Some images may have been intended to ensure successful hunts, honor the spirits of animals, or commemorate communal achievements. The act of creating these artworks required observation, skill, and intentionality, reflecting a sophisticated cognitive and spiritual life. Art became a medium for connecting humans to both the seen and unseen forces that governed existence in the Ice Age. Spiritual beliefs likely extended beyond hunting rituals and death practices. Humans may have recognized natural phenomena, thunder, storms, changing seasons, as powerful forces requiring acknowledgement, respect, or appeasement. The creation of figurines, amulets, or markings could have functioned as protective talismans or expressions of reverence. These artifacts suggest an emerging worldview in which humans sought to understand their environment not only through observation, but also through symbolic interpretation, blending survival with meaning. Belief systems became intertwined with practical knowledge, guiding behaviors that enhanced both physical survival and social cohesion. Rituals also reinforced social structure and roles within the community. Certain individuals, perhaps elders, shamans, or experienced hunters, may have led ceremonies, instructing others in rites that combine practical and symbolic significance. Leadership in ritual context was both functional and psychological, providing guidance and reinforcing hierarchy or respect within the group. These practices created order and stability, ensuring that the community remained organized, resilient, and capable of coordinated action in the face of environmental challenges. The cyclical nature of seasons may have influenced ritual timing. Winter, with its scarcity of food and extreme conditions, was likely a period of intense preparation, reflection, and a ceremony. Celebrations of successful hunts, the storage of provisions, or the survival of another winter likely included symbolic acts designed to acknowledge effort, courage, and communal achievement. These rituals strengthened cohesion, morale, and the collective resolve necessary to endure prolonged periods of hardship. In this sense, ritual and belief were not mere abstractions. They were tools for psychological and social survival. Ritual also provided a framework for understanding suffering, loss, and danger. By interpreting death, injury, or environmental hazards through symbolic or spiritual lenses, humans could mitigate fear, cultivate resilience, and instill a sense of purpose. Practices that honored the dead, invoked animal spirits, or marked seasonal changes transformed raw experience into narrative and meaning, reinforcing both cultural identity and practical knowledge. The interplay of ritual and survival created a feedback loop, where belief guided behavior and behavior ensured survival. Ultimately, Ice Age rituals and beliefs reveal the depth of human adaptation beyond physical necessity. They illustrate the emergence of symbolic thought, social cohesion, and cultural continuity. In the face of extreme cold, scarcity, and danger, humans created frameworks of meaning that helped them endure, cooperate, and transmit knowledge across generations. Rituals were both practical and spiritual, bridging life and death, survival and purpose. Through firelit ceremonies, symbolic art, and communal observances, early humans transformed the harsh, indifferent world of the Ice Age into a landscape infused with connection, meaning, and collective identity. In the frozen wilderness, rituals and beliefs were as essential to survival as fire, food, and shelter. They provided structure to chaos, comfort in despair, and coherence to the unpredictable rhythms of life and death. They reinforced social bonds, guided behavior, and ensured the continuity of knowledge and tradition. Ice Age humans, navigating the extremes of winter, were not only survivors. They were thinkers, observers, and creators of meaning. Rituals and beliefs allowed them to face mortality, interpret their environment, and affirm the value of life in a world that demanded resilience, ingenuity, and courage. In the vast and unforgiving landscapes of the Ice Age, survival was not a matter of staying in one place. Humans were constantly on the move, following the rhythms of the seasons and the migrations of the animals they depended upon for food, clothing, and tools. Migration was a strategic response to scarcity and environmental change, requiring careful observation, planning, and coordination. The frozen plains, snow-covered valleys, and jagged mountain passes were both pathways and obstacles, shaping the routes humans would take and dictating the timing and scale of their journeys. Every journey carried risk, blizzards, predators, treacherous terrain, but staying put could mean famine or death. Movement was not optional, it was essential. Tracking herds was central to migration strategy. Humans learned to anticipate the movements of large mammals, such as reindeer, bison, mammoths, and wild horses, whose migrations were driven by food availability and seasonal cycles. Following these animals required detailed knowledge of the landscape and keen observation of weather patterns, plant cycles, and animal behavior. Hunters understood the signs of approaching herds, broken branches, footprints in snow, and distant sounds, and coordinated movements to intercept or accompany them. These journeys were both survival strategy and ecological intelligence, illustrating how deeply humans were attuned to their environment. Migration was often a communal effort. Entire groups, including hunters, gatherers, children, and elders, moved together, sharing labor and responsibilities. Leaders or experienced guides determined routes, monitored hazards, and coordinated timing. The pace of travel had to accommodate the slowest members, especially children or the elderly, while ensuring that the group remained in proximity to food sources and shelter opportunities. Cooperation and planning were critical. Miscalculations could lead to separation, starvation, or vulnerability to predators. Successful migration was a testament to human organization, resilience, and foresight. The physical challenges of Ice Age migration were immense. Traversing deep snow, icy rivers, and steep inclines required endurance and skill. Storms could trap groups in exposed areas, while extreme cold sapped energy and increased the risk of frostbite or hypothermia. Travelers had to carry tools, provisions, and sometimes vulnerable members, making mobility a careful balance between necessity and feasibility. Yet humans adapted, using sleds, snowshoes, or makeshift carrying devices, and employing clothing and shelter strategies developed over generations. Every innovation was a product of experience, observation, and trial and error, demonstrating the interplay between environment, ingenuity, and survival. Migration also fostered social cohesion. Traveling together required trust, coordination, and shared responsibility. Groups divided labor according to ability and experience, assigning roles for scouting, hunting, gathering, and protection. Shared hardships strengthened bonds, as survival depended on mutual support and cooperation. Communication was essential, not just for coordinating movements, but for reinforcing social norms, distributing resources, and maintaining morale. The necessity of collaboration in migration highlights the social intelligence that complemented physical and technological adaptation during the Ice Age. Journeys were not purely utilitarian. They also shaped cultural and spiritual life. Movement through different landscapes exposed humans to diverse resources, challenges, and experiences, which may have influenced art, ritual, and mythology. Observing the cycles of the seasons, the migrations of animals, and the changing landscapes contributed to early humans' understanding of time, patterns, and cause and effect in nature. Rituals may have accompanied departures or arrivals, symbolizing hope, protection, or gratitude for safe passage and successful sustenance. The interplay of movement and culture illustrates that migration was as much a cognitive and symbolic activity as a physical one. Strategic migration required planning beyond the immediate season. Humans had to anticipate winter severity, track long-term trends in animal behavior, and prepare for the possibility of resource scarcity along the route. Food caches, portable shelters, and coordinated hunting strategies ensured that the group could endure prolonged travel. These strategies were not instinctive. They reflected observation, experience, and intergenerational knowledge, highlighting the sophistication of Ice Age survival planning. The ability to plan, predict, and adapt to changing conditions was a hallmark of human intelligence in a challenging and variable environment. Predation risk was ever present during migration. Wolves, bears, and other large carnivores followed the same migratory patterns, seeking opportunities to hunt. Humans had to remain vigilant, setting up temporary shelters, lighting fires, and maintaining watches to protect both people and resources. The coordination required to safeguard the group while moving over vast distances demonstrates the combination of physical skill, strategic thinking, and social cooperation that characterized Ice Age life. Migration was a delicate negotiation between opportunity and risk, with survival dependent on careful observation, quick decision-making, and mutual reliance. Ultimately, migration and seasonal journeys were central to Ice Age survival. They illustrate the complex interplay between humans and their environment, combining observation, planning, technology, and social intelligence. Movement was not random but strategic, informed by the behavior of animals, the cycles of the seasons, and the capabilities of the human group. Every journey was both a practical necessity and a demonstration of adaptability, foresight, and resilience. Humans learned to read the land, interpret animal behavior, and coordinate complex group movements, skills that ensured survival across harsh, frozen landscapes. Migration also reinforced cultural continuity. Knowledge of routes, landmarks, and seasonal resources was passed down from generation to generation, ensuring that each new traveler could benefit from prior experience. These patterns of movement created a framework for social cohesion, shared learning, and collective memory. Through migration, Ice Age humans transformed the unforgiving landscape from a threat into a navigable environment, demonstrating that survival was not merely about endurance, but about intelligence, collaboration, and strategic foresight. In the endless cold and snow, migration was more than a physical act. It was a lifeline, a strategy for survival, and a testament to human ingenuity. By following the herds, anticipating the seasons, and moving as coordinated communities, early humans ensured their survival, reinforced social bonds, and created the foundations for cultural and technological advancement. Every step across frozen plains and icy valleys represented both risk and opportunity, a dance with nature that demanded courage, intelligence, and cooperation. In the story of Ice Age survival, migration stands as a defining chapter, revealing the remarkable adaptability, resilience, and foresight of our ancestors. Survival in the Ice Age was not only a battle against nature, but also against other human groups. As populations grew and resources became scarce, conflicts over food, shelter, and hunting grounds occasionally erupted. Early humans needed to defend their territory, protect their families, and safeguard valuable resources such as stored meat, hides, and tools. Warfare was not constant, but when it occurred, it required strategy, coordination, and ingenuity. The frozen landscapes amplified these challenges, making planning, vigilance, and physical prowess essential for defending oneself and one's community. Every conflict was high stakes, with survival, reputation, and resources hanging in the balance. Territorial disputes often arose around critical resources. Caves, water sources, or areas rich in game were essential for survival, and groups would contest them when necessary. Humans had to recognize and respect boundaries while also asserting control when survival demanded it. Encounters were not always violent. Negotiation, ritualized displays, or intimidation may have been used to prevent direct confrontation. However, when conflict became unavoidable, early humans relied on coordinated strategies, weapons, and knowledge of terrain to gain an advantage. Understanding both the environment and human behavior was crucial in navigating these dangerous encounters. Weapons and defensive tools were vital. Spears, clubs, and stone-tipped arrows could be used both for hunting and combat, demonstrating the dual-purpose nature of early technology. Wooden shields, thick hides, and improvised fortifications enhanced protection during attacks. Fire also played a defensive role, used to deter predators or rival groups, or to control strategic points in the landscape. The development and deployment of these tools required planning, craftsmanship, and tactical thinking, illustrating that survival depended not only on physical strength, but also on intellectual and practical skill. Group coordination was essential in defense. Individuals could not fend off attackers alone, especially when opponents were numerous or armed. Communities organized roles and responsibilities, assigning sentries, defenders, and leaders to manage threats. Communication was critical, using signals, shouts, or gestures to coordinate actions. The ability to work together, anticipate enemy movements, and respond swiftly often determined the outcome of conflicts. Social cohesion and trust became as crucial as weaponry and strategy, reinforcing the connection between community and survival. Ice Age warfare was often opportunistic and adaptive. Ambushes, strategic positioning, and knowledge of the terrain allowed smaller groups to protect themselves against stronger adversaries. Natural features such as cliffs, rivers, and dense forests were leveraged to create defensive advantages. Groups familiar with seasonal patterns, snow conditions, and animal behavior could use this knowledge to outmaneuver opponents. Adaptability and foresight were critical, reflecting a sophisticated understanding of both human and environmental dynamics. Defense also extended to protecting resources and infrastructure. Stored food, shelters, and essential tools were as valuable as live prey. Groups employed strategies to safeguard these assets, including guarding caches, concealing shelters, and maintaining watch rotations during periods of vulnerability. Fire, noise, and visible displays of strength served as deterrents, signaling to potential intruders that the cost of attack might outweigh the reward. These practices illustrate that early humans understood the value of preparation, perception, and deterrence in ensuring survival. Social hierarchy and leadership likely influence conflict outcomes. Experienced hunters, elders, or skilled warriors may have guided tactical decisions, coordinated defenses, and resolved disputes. Leadership was reinforced by competence, courage, and knowledge of both strategy and the environment. These roles were not only functional, but also symbolic, reflecting respect, authority, and trust within the community. In turn, successful defense and coordination reinforce social bonds, loyalty, and the group's overall cohesion, further enhancing survival prospects. Conflict also had psychological dimensions. The threat of violence and loss demanded vigilance, courage, and resilience. Communities developed strategies to manage fear and stress, including shared responsibilities, ritualized behaviors, and cooperative planning. These approaches helped maintain morale and focus during dangerous encounters, demonstrating that psychological preparedness was as crucial as physical readiness. Managing anxiety, fear, and uncertainty became a vital skill for both leaders and ordinary members, ensuring that the group remained capable of responding effectively to threats. Warfare in the Ice Age was often limited by environmental constraints. Harsh winters, deep snow, and frigid rivers made extended campaigns impractical. Conflicts were likely episodic, opportunistic, and highly focused on critical survival objectives. This limitation, however, did not reduce the importance of preparation. Planning, weapon readiness, and territorial awareness were essential even in the absence of active conflict, reflecting the constant interplay between survival strategy and environmental conditions. Ultimately, Ice Age warfare and defense illustrate the complexity of human adaptation. Survival was not determined solely by mastery of fire, clothing, or hunting, but also by the ability to navigate human competition and protect essential resources. Strategy, coordination, tool use, and social cohesion combined to create resilient communities capable of defending themselves against threats. The interplay of environment, human ingenuity, and social intelligence shaped both conflict and cooperation, revealing that survival in the Ice Age depended as much on understanding human behavior as mastering the natural world. Through vigilance, preparation, and tactical acumen, early humans ensured the safety of their families, preserved vital resources, and reinforced social bonds that were essential for enduring extreme winters. The skills honed in these encounters, planning, cooperation, and adaptive strategy, would resonate across generations, forming the foundation for human resilience, culture, and collective survival. In the frozen wilderness, defense and warfare were not merely acts of aggression, but vital instruments of life, safeguarding both people and the fragile ecosystems upon which they depended. In the unforgiving winters of the Ice Age, the fragility of a human body was constantly tested. Cold, injury, infection, and malnutrition posed daily threats, and survival required not only hunting, gathering, and shelter, but also knowledge of how to treat wounds and illness. Early humans developed rudimentary forms of medicine and healing that combined observation, experimentation, and practical ingenuity. Caring for the sick and injured was essential, not just for the individual, but for the survival of the entire group, as every member played a role in hunting, gathering, and maintaining social cohesion. Illness or injury could be fatal in extreme cold, making timely care critical for life itself. Ice Age humans relied on a combination of natural remedies, basic surgery, and preventive measures. Plants, herbs, and roots with medicinal properties were identified through careful observation and trial and error. Certain leaves and barks provided relief from pain, reduced inflammation, or acted as antiseptics, while roots and seeds could boost energy or aid digestion. Knowledge of these natural remedies was carefully preserved and passed down through generations, forming a basic pharmacopoeia of survival. The ability to recognize, harvest, and apply these resources effectively often determined whether a wound became infected or healed successfully. Caring for injuries required both skill and improvisation. Hunters and gatherers faced laceration from sharp tools, punctures from spears or bones, and sprains or broken bones from treacherous terrain. Ice Age humans developed splints and bindings using wood, bone, and sinew to stabilize fractures and support healing. Leaves, moss, or clay might have been used as bandages or protective coverings for wounds, preventing contamination and infection. Even without formal understanding of germs or disease, these practices demonstrated an intuitive grasp of hygiene, infection control, and the mechanics of the human body. Cold itself presented a persistent health threat. Frostbite, hypothermia, and respiratory illnesses were common, particularly in infants, the elderly, or those injured. Fire and insulated shelters provided protection, but humans also learned to recognize early signs of cold-related illness and respond with warmth, movement, and layered clothing. Observation and experience allowed them to distinguish minor injuries from life-threatening conditions, a knowledge vital to the group's continued survival. Understanding the body's limits and recognizing danger early was a critical component of Ice Age medicine. Community care played a central role in healing. Sick or injured individuals could not fend for themselves, requiring others to provide food, warmth, and assistance with daily tasks. This caregiving fostered social bonds, reinforced trust, and emphasized the interdependence of the group. Caring for others was both a practical and moral imperative. The survival of one depended on the well-being of all. The presence of skilled healers or knowledgeable elders further strengthened community resilience, as their expertise in treatment, observation, and instruction could prevent minor injuries from becoming fatal. Spiritual or ritualistic elements were often intertwined with healing practices. Some plants or procedures may have been used in conjunction with chants, symbols, or other ritual behaviors, reflecting a belief that illness could be influenced by unseen forces. Healing may have been seen as both a physical and spiritual act, reinforcing social cohesion and providing psychological comfort. Ritualized treatment not only addressed the body, but also alleviated anxiety and fear, which were critical in extreme conditions where panic or despair could compromise recovery. Infants and children were particularly vulnerable, requiring special attention during the freezing winters. Breastfeeding, warmth, and constant care were essential for survival, while knowledge of nutrition and protective clothing helped prevent disease and cold-related injury. Children also observed caregiving practices, gradually learning techniques for treating wounds, recognizing plants, and maintaining hygiene. This early education ensured continuity of knowledge and skill, embedding medical practices deeply within the culture and daily routines of Ice Age communities. Infection and disease presented invisible threats. Ice Age humans may have observed the importance of cleanliness, isolating sick individuals or avoiding spoiled food, even without understanding pathogens. Applying natural antiseptics, cleaning wounds, and monitoring progression demonstrated an empirical approach to health. These practices reflect both careful observation and adaptive problem-solving, illustrating that survival depended not only on physical strength, but also on cognitive skill and experiential learning. Psychological healing was also crucial. The stress of injury, illness, or the threat of death could weaken individuals, impair judgment, and reduce resilience. Emotional support, storytelling, communal warmth, and ritual provided comfort and maintained morale. Healing in the Ice Age was thus holistic, combining practical treatment, environmental management, social support, and ritualized care. Physical and psychological resilience were inseparable, each reinforcing the other in the struggle against extreme conditions. Ultimately, Ice Age medicine and healing highlight the ingenuity, adaptability, and compassion of early humans. Care for the wounded and sick extended beyond simple survival. It was a demonstration of social intelligence, observation, and cultural knowledge. Through the use of natural remedies, improvised tools, preventive measures, and community care, humans mitigated the lethal risks of injury, illness, and cold. The ability to treat, comfort, and teach ensured the continuity of life and knowledge, embedding survival skills within the social fabric of the group. In the frozen landscapes, where every misstep could mean death, medicine and healing were as critical as fire, clothing, and food. These practices preserved life, reinforced social bonds, and transformed vulnerability into resilience. Ice Age humans not only mastered the external challenges of the environment, but also developed systems to safeguard the body and mind, creating a foundation for the sophisticated medical knowledge that would evolve over millennia. Caring for one another became an essential survival tool, ensuring that communities could endure the relentless winters and thrive despite the hardships of the Ice Age. Life in the Ice Age was intricately bound to the animals that shared the landscape. Large mammals, small game, birds, and even aquatic species were not merely background to human survival. They were central to every aspect of life, shaping diet, clothing, tools, and social practices. Early humans developed a deep understanding of animal behavior, seasonal migrations, and ecological patterns, creating a complex web of interaction that blended hunting, domestication, observation, and cautious coexistence. These interactions could mean life or death. Animals were both invaluable resources and dangerous predators, requiring humans to continuously navigate a delicate balance between opportunity and risk. Hunting large game was the cornerstone of survival and demanded sophisticated knowledge and skill. Mammoths, bison, reindeer, and wild horses provided meat, hides, bones, and sinew essential for sustenance, clothing, and tools. Tracking these animals required observation of footprints, droppings, broken vegetation, and other subtle signs. Hunters learned the habits and vulnerabilities of prey, developing strategies for ambush, driving herds toward traps, or using coordinated attacks. Success provided not only nutrition, but also raw materials vital for crafting warm clothing, building shelters, and creating tools, highlighting the interconnectedness of ecological awareness, ingenuity, and survival. Smaller animals played an equally crucial role in daily life. Rabbits, foxes, birds, and fish offered reliable sources of protein, often easier to catch when large game was scarce. Traps, snares, and fishing tools allowed humans to exploit these resources efficiently. Their hides, feathers, and bones were also used for clothing, insulation, and decorative purposes. Understanding the habits, breeding cycles, and habitats of these species allowed humans to plan and allocate effort effectively, ensuring a balanced and sustainable approach to the environment. This knowledge required careful observation, memory, and experimentation, reflecting a sophisticated ecological intelligence. Some animals were approached with caution and respect, acknowledged as powerful, dangerous, or even sacred. Predators such as wolves, bears, and saber-toothed cats posed constant threats, capable of ending a hunting party or destroying a settlement. Humans developed strategies to mitigate these dangers, maintaining vigilance, constructing shelters in defensible locations, lighting protective fires, and organizing watches during sleep or communal activity. Knowledge of predator behavior, movement patterns, and response to human presence was critical for safety, demonstrating that survival required both courage and understanding of the natural order. Interactions with animals were not solely utilitarian. They also had cultural and symbolic significance. Cave paintings frequently depict animals in both hunting scenes and symbolic contexts, suggesting that humans observed, revered, and mythologized the creatures around them. Certain species may have been regarded as spiritual guides, ancestral symbols, or markers of seasonal change. The act of depicting or venerating animals in art, ritual, or social practice reflects an awareness that life was intertwined with other beings, and that survival was as much about respect and observation as about consumption and control. Domestication and companionship may have emerged in subtle forms. Early humans likely began to interact with certain animals, such as wolves, in ways that foreshadowed domestication. These interactions provided mutual benefit. Humans gained protection, assistance in hunting, and companionship, while animals gained access to food and shelter. Such relationships required patience, observation, and understanding of animal behavior, creating an early foundation for cooperative bonds between species. The cognitive leap from predator-prey dynamics to partnership underscores the adaptability and intelligence of Ice Age humans. The seasonal migrations of animals directly influenced human movement, settlement patterns, and resource management. Following the herds meant planning routes, timing hunts, and coordinating group mobility to align with the availability of essential resources. Knowledge of breeding, feeding, and resting patterns allowed humans to maximize efficiency while minimizing risk. In essence, animal behavior dictated the rhythm of human life, creating a deep ecological interdependence that shaped culture, social organization, and technological innovation. Resource extraction from animals extended beyond immediate sustenance. Bones and antlers were fashioned into tools, weapons, and ornaments, while sinew and tendons provided strong, flexible cordage. Fat and marrow were valuable for cooking, fuel, and nutrition. Skins and furs insulated against cold and were essential for constructing shelters. Even the smallest or seemingly inconsequential parts of animals were utilized, reflecting a comprehensive understanding of the environment and a pragmatic approach to survival. Waste was minimized, and every encounter with wildlife had layered practical and symbolic significance. Animals also influenced psychological and cultural development. Observing, tracking, and surviving alongside dangerous or intelligent species honed attention, memory, problem-solving, and strategic thinking. Ritual, storytelling, and art often centered around animal behavior, teaching lessons of survival, cooperation, and respect. The dynamic between humans and animals created a feedback loop of learning and adaptation, shaping cognition, social behavior, and cultural practices in ways that would echo through subsequent generations. Ultimately, Ice Age humans navigated a world where animals were simultaneously companions, adversaries, and resources. Their survival depended on observation, skill, strategic planning, and empathy toward the creatures around them. Through hunting, gathering, art, ritual, and cautious interaction, humans forged a sophisticated understanding of the natural world, balancing exploitation with respect, danger with opportunity. Interactions with animals were more than a necessity. They were a defining element of Ice Age life, shaping human evolution, culture, and the enduring story of survival in a frozen, predator-filled world. Winter in the Ice Age was a season of extreme trial. Sub-zero temperatures, relentless winds, and snow-covered landscapes transformed the environment into a formidable adversary. Survival required more than physical strength or hunting skill. It demanded ingenuity, planning, and the ability to adapt both body and mind to an unforgiving climate. Early humans mastered a combination of fire, shelter, and psychological resilience to endure the harshest months of the year. Each element of survival was interdependent, forming a delicate balance that allowed life to persist against overwhelming odds. Fire was the cornerstone of winter survival. Beyond providing warmth, it served multiple essential functions: cooking food, deterring predators, drying clothing and furs, and signaling presence to distant members of the group. Mastering fire required understanding materials, techniques, and timing. Wood selection, spar generation, and fire maintenance were skills honed over generations. A mismanaged fire could spell disaster, while a well-tended hearth was the heart of safety, sustenance, and community life. Fire also had psychological significance, offering comfort, focus, and a sense of control in a world otherwise dominated by cold and darkness. Shelters complemented fire, creating microenvironments that insulated against the extreme conditions outside. Natural formations such as caves and rock overhangs were ideal, providing protection from wind and predators. When natural shelters were unavailable, humans constructed dwellings using wood, bone, hides, and snow. These structures were often layered, combining insulation, structural support, and accessibility. Efficient shelter placement maximized the benefits of fire while minimizing exposure, demonstrating strategic planning and environmental awareness. Shelters were not merely physical spaces. They were hubs of social activity, education, and survival. Clothing was another critical layer of defense against winter's harshness. Multi-layered garments crafted from hides, furs, and sinew created an insulating envelope that conserved heat while allowing mobility. Extremities, hands, feet, and faces were protected with additional layers, reflecting a sophisticated understanding of thermal regulation. Proper clothing allowed humans to travel, hunt, and perform essential tasks, even in the coldest conditions, reducing risk of frostbite and hypothermia. The integration of clothing, shelter, and fire illustrates the holistic approach early humans developed, combining multiple survival strategies into a cohesive system. Food storage was essential during winter, as hunting success could be unpredictable and plant resources scarce. Humans developed methods to preserve meat, including drying, smoking, and storing in snow or cold caves. Fat and marrow were utilized for both nutrition and fuel. Knowledge of which foods were safe to consume and how to maintain them reflected acute observation and empirical learning. Stockpiling resources required planning, cooperation, and discipline management, reinforcing social bonds and ensuring survival during periods of scarcity. Winter was not a time of mere endurance. It was a season demanding foresight and strategic preparation. Mental resilience was as important as physical preparation. The long, dark nights, extreme cold, and constant threat of danger imposed psychological strain. Communities maintained morale through social interaction, storytelling, ritual, and shared responsibility. Teaching and mentoring younger members created a sense of purpose, while collaborative tasks reinforced social cohesion and mutual reliance. Emotional and cognitive strategies for coping with fear, uncertainty, and fatigue were crucial for sustaining the group, reflecting the early development of psychological adaptation in humans. Survival was as much about managing the mind as mastering the environment. Observation of natural patterns further enhanced survival. Humans tracked the behavior of animals, the progression of storms, and seasonal cues to anticipate hazards and opportunities. Understanding when and where prey migrated, when rivers froze, or when snowstorms were likely allowed groups to plan travel, hunting, and shelter use effectively. This environmental intelligence was intertwined with practical skill and experience, illustrating the sophisticated interplay between cognition, observation, and survival. Winter survival required constant vigilance, adaptability, and an intimate relationship with the surrounding world. Cooperation and division of labor were fundamental to enduring the season. While some individuals hunted or maintained fire, others repaired shelters, prepared clothing, or tended to the sick and young. Every member contributed to the community's well-being, ensuring that no one was left vulnerable. This interdependence reinforced trust, accountability, and social cohesion, critical factors for sustaining life in extreme conditions. Winter survival was a collective achievement, not a solitary endeavor, reflecting the importance of community intelligence in human evolution. Finally, flexibility and innovation defined winter strategies. Humans experimented with new tools, improved clothing techniques, adapted shelters to changing conditions, and refined fire-making methods. Trial and error, combined with careful observation, allowed for continuous improvement in survival methods. Each adaptation reduced risk, increased efficiency, and enhanced the chances of enduring long winters. These innovations were cumulative, passed down through generations, and formed the foundation for technological and cultural progress in subsequent human societies. Ultimately, winter survival in the Ice Age was a testament to human resilience, ingenuity, and social intelligence. Fire, shelter, clothing, food management, and psychological adaptation created an interconnected system that enabled humans to endure what would otherwise have been deadly conditions. Survival required both physical skill and cognitive insight, blending observation, planning, creativity, and cooperation. Early humans transformed the frozen landscape from an insurmountable threat into a navigable, livable environment, demonstrating adaptability that would define the species for millennia to come. Through fire, shelter, and mental resilience, Ice Age humans not only survived but thrived in one of the harshest climates Earth has ever known. Their strategies reveal the depth of human intelligence, the importance of community, and the enduring capacity to adapt to extreme conditions. Winter was not merely a season to endure. It was a challenge that shaped culture, innovation, and social cohesion, leaving a legacy of ingenuity and resilience that continues to resonate in the story of human survival. The story of Ice Age survival is not merely a chronicle of hardship, but a testament to human ingenuity, resilience, and adaptability. The strategies developed to endure freezing winters, hunt vast herds, navigate perilous landscapes, and cooperate within communities left an indelible mark on the trajectory of humanity. Every fire lit, every shelter constructed, every hunt coordinated, and every ritual observed contributed not only to the immediate survival of individuals and groups, but also to the long-term shaping of culture, social structures, and human cognition. Ice Age humans were architects of survival, laying the foundations for the complex societies that would emerge tens of thousands of years later. One of the most profound legacies of this era is the development of social cooperation. Survival in extreme cold and scarcity required tight-knit communities where trust, communication, and shared responsibility were essential. These small groups cultivated systems of division of labor, caregiving, and resource sharing that became the blueprint for later human societies. The need to work collectively in the face of environmental and predatory threats fostered empathy, coordination, and social intelligence, traits that continue to define humanity. In essence, Ice Age humans learned that cooperation was as crucial to survival as strength or skill, embedding social cohesion into the core of human evolution. Technological innovation is another lasting contribution. Tools, weapons, clothing, and shelters were not merely practical. They were products of observation, creativity, and problem-solving. Spear points, stone blades, bone awls, and fur-lined garments reflect an acute understanding of materials and their applications. Fire mastery, hunting strategies, and preservation techniques highlight the integration of knowledge across domains. Each improvement increased efficiency, reduced risk, and enhanced survival odds, creating a cumulative effect over generations. This culture of innovation demonstrates that early humans were not passive survivors. They were active engineers of their environment. Cultural and symbolic practices developed during this era also left enduring legacies. Rituals surrounding death, hunting, and the seasons, along with cave art, figurines, and markings, indicate a deep cognitive and spiritual awareness. These expressions reflect the capacity to understand abstract concepts such as mortality, respect, and continuity. By codifying knowledge through ritual, symbol, and art, Ice Age humans established early forms of communication and cultural memory. These practices strengthened social bonds, transmitted essential survival knowledge, and laid the foundation for language, storytelling, and cultural identity that would evolve over millennia. Knowledge transfer and education were crucial elements of Ice Age life that shaped humanity's long-term trajectory. Children learned by observation, imitation, and guided instruction, acquiring skills in hunting, tracking, tool-making, fire maintenance, and survival psychology. This intergenerational transmission of knowledge ensured that wisdom accumulated over generations, creating a repository of practical and strategic expertise. It is this capacity to preserve, share, and build upon knowledge that distinguishes humans from other species and enables the exponential growth of culture and technology throughout history. Resilience in the face of environmental extremes is another enduring lesson. Ice Age humans developed strategies to cope with cold, scarcity, and uncertainty, balancing physical endurance with mental fortitude. Psychological resilience through social support, storytelling, ritual, and shared responsibility was as vital as physical adaptations. These lessons in adaptability, risk assessment, and emotional management remain relevant today, illustrating the deep connection between human survival, cognition, and culture. Humans learn to endure, adapt, and innovate, forging traits that would enable them to conquer new environments and challenges in the millennia that followed. Interactions with animals during this period also shaped humanity's relationship with nature. Tracking herds, hunting strategically, and understanding predator behavior honed observation, patience, and ecological intelligence. Some animals became companions, sources of tools, or objects of symbolic significance, fostering early forms of domestication, partnership, and environmental stewardship. This nuanced understanding of the natural world laid the groundwork for agriculture, animal husbandry, and conservation practices in later human societies, demonstrating that survival required both exploitation and respect for the environment. Ice Age experiences also shaped human innovation in problem-solving and strategic planning. Coordinating migrations, defending territory, managing resources, and mitigating environmental risks required foresight, adaptability, and collaboration. Humans learned to anticipate challenges, organize collective action, and create contingency strategies, skills that underpin governance, military planning, and large-scale projects in later civilizations. The ability to navigate complex systems, balance risk, and innovate solutions is a legacy of survival that extends far beyond the Ice Age, informing the very architecture of human progress. Perhaps most importantly, the Ice Age instilled a profound understanding of impermanence and resilience. Humans faced the inevitability of death, scarcity, and environmental change, learning to endure uncertainty while extracting meaning from life through ritual, art, and social connection. This awareness of mortality, combined with the necessity of cooperation, observation, and planning, fostered cognitive sophistication and emotional depth. The ability to confront fear, adapt to adversity, and preserve knowledge for future generations is a defining hallmark of humanity, forged in the frozen crucible of the Ice Age. In summary, the legacy of Ice Age survival is multifaceted. It encompasses social cohesion, technological innovation, cultural expression, knowledge transmission, ecological awareness, and psychological resilience. These achievements were not incidental. They were deliberate, adaptive strategies that ensured life persisted in one of Earth's harshest climates. Ice Age humans transformed adversity into opportunity, creating systems of survival that combined observation, ingenuity, cooperation, and cultural sophistication. Their lives were defined by both struggle and triumph, fear and ingenuity, cold and warmth. A dynamic interplay that shaped not only their survival, but the future of humanity itself. The story of Ice Age survival is a story of human potential. By studying the ways early humans endured extreme winters, hunted, crafted tools, built communities, and interpreted their world, we gain insight into the foundations of civilization, culture, and innovation. The lessons of resilience, adaptability, and collaboration remain timeless, reminding us that the essence of humanity was forged not in ease or comfort, but in the relentless pursuit of survival against staggering odds. In every fire lit, every hunt executed, every ritual performed, and every community nurtured, Ice Age humans left a legacy that continues to resonate, an enduring testament to the ingenuity, courage, and indomitable spirit that define us all.